Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us in this session. My name is Tilak Hardeen. So at the end of this session, or towards the end, you will be allowed some time to ask questions, to clarify anything you want to clarify. Additionally, I will be placing a link for you to do an evaluation of the session. So here we go. Mrs. Allison Gillentine received her bachelor's and master's from the University of Texas at Tyler in Tyler, Texas, that great state of Texas. She has been in public education for 16 years. Her experiences include teaching grade 8 science, high school biology, honors physics, chemistry, IPC inclusion, state assessment prep, and math science teams competitions. Mrs. Gillentine has a published lesson in a collegiate text that is teaching students with special needs in the inclusive classroom by Bryant, and Smith, and that can be found on page 206. Her 8 years of experience as a classroom teacher, experience as a district special programs coordinator, district level specialist, district science coordinator, and 5A campus academic dean have provided her with the opportunity to become an educator that supports learner-centered curricula, best instructional practices for all populations, and promotes success for all staff and students. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you heard my introduction. So I will now hand you over to Mrs. Allison Gillentine, and she will take you through, and she will do or tell you what will happen in case anything I said she wants to vary from that. So over to you, Mrs. Gillentine.
Okay, guys, can everybody hear me? Just making sure. If one person can just say that they can hear me.
Yes, okay. I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. All right, guys, as you have questions, if you'll put them in the chat, and if you'll interrupt me, sir, okay, it's Hardeen, right?
Yes.
Okay, I wanted to say it right. Thank you. So I'm glad you guys are with me. I'm super excited. I put a note in the chat. If you'll take a picture of this screen and or write down that bit.ly. It is case sensitive, and that link will give you access to everything in this presentation. Again, as you have questions, please let me know. I'm trying to watch my time. So right now I'm going to set it for 40 minutes on my device so that I can make sure we are using our time wisely. I'm assuming everybody has interactive devices. So I'm going to walk you through this as if we were doing a virtual lesson together and you were my students. So
I'm not sure about the interactive devices, but everyone can hear you.
Right, but they're on a device, right?
Yes, they're on their device.
Yes, that's it. So they should be able to get on internet and open up additional windows if they'd like to see other things.
Sure.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay, so let me get my timer going. Okay, guys. Okay, so make sure again that you've taken a picture of this screen, and you might want to, Mr. Hardeen, maybe copy that and put it into the chat, that bit.ly. It's http://bit.ly/virtual exceptional. The virtual V is capital and the E in exceptional is capital.
Okay, we have a tech person who is part of the program, so okay. I'm hoping that person is listening to do all of that.
Awesome. Okay, guys, here we go. So this is quick. This is who am I? That's me and my people. I have one kiddo, educated for 16 years, as he mentioned. I'm from UT Tyler. Classroom teacher for 8 years, campus admin for 8 years. I love curriculum differentiation and staff and student success are my goals. I hope I can give you some of the following goals from this workshop. We're going to observe a general lesson plan to support differentiated instruction. We're going to look at G Suite, Slides Focus specifically. Screencastify, that's an extension you guys can get added to a Google presentation. And Padlet is interfaces for virtual science instruction. We're going to utilize a Google form and Flipgrid to check for understanding. And then we're going to experience a grade 5 science lesson focused on food chain, food web, producers, consumers, and decomposers. We can utilize our tech tools to differentiate for our exceptional kiddos. Okay, so let's rock. The first thing that I wanted to show you guys is a specific thing that I made. I have a YouTube introduction for food chain, and then I have an important information slide. So when I teach my students that are at home, I like to give them the vocabulary and I like to give them the information. That way I know it is correct. I have found when I try to let them go and find things, sometimes they get bits and pieces and create misconceptions that way. Additionally, this way I have a supplemental aid to use with my exceptional students that need some additional scaffold. So I have the pertinent definitions here. This would be the note sheet that all students for this lesson would use. And I have a flow chart to give an example of a food chain with the pertinent vocabulary and a visual for sheltered instruction and a short descriptor. Okay. This introduction is a short YouTube video that will show you. Let me skip the VBRO. I love it when they do that.
That is usually covered by her phone.
All right. So she gives you a short intro on food chain.
Not everybody likes the same kind of food, right? That's probably a good thing. I mean, all the more pizza for me. But whether we eat milkshakes or mangoes, pizzas or pears, tacos or toast, we use the energy that's in our food to stay alive. But how did that energy get into our food in the first place? The answer is that energy flows between living things. It's almost like each form of food is a link in a chain. A food chain. You might have heard that humans are on the top of the food chain because we eat pretty much everything, and except for the occasional video game monster and maybe the odd bear, nothing tries to eat us. But what is a food chain exactly? A food chain is a model that shows how energy flows between living things. You can think of animals and plants in the same food chain as all living in the same neighborhood, which scientists call a habitat. And they all have a job to do, interacting with each other day in and day out. Together, they form a kind of system, a self-contained collection of different things that all work together as a whole. And they also interact with the non-living stuff around them, like the water, the air, the ground, and the sun. Put it all together, and what do you get? A special system called an ecosystem. And food chains show us what eats what in an ecosystem. Now, everything that's alive is in a food chain, including you, my friend. And actually, most living things are in more than one food chain, depending on what or who they're munching on at the moment. I mean, you don't eat the same thing for dinner every night, do you? Didn't think so. Now, let's see how a food chain works by making a diagram of how these interactions happen in nature. First, all of the energy that's in a food chain starts with the sun. I can't stress that enough, people. Plants take the energy from the sun's rays and change it into chemical energy. So when a nice patch of lush green grass starts to grow, it's capturing some of the energy from the sun to do it. Then when an animal, like a rabbit, wanders by and nibbles on that grass, the energy from the plant is transferred into the rabbit's body. Now, if a hungry hawk decides that the rabbit would make a yummy supper, then the energy from the rabbit is transferred to the hawk. And in this ecosystem, nothing is large or brave enough to take on the hawk. I mean, just look at her. So we've hit the top of the food chain, and we've just made a nifty model of it. So, a food chain is a model that shows how energy flows between living things in an ecosystem. Energy in a food chain starts with the sun, which is turned into chemical energy by plants. And this energy moves up the food chain as animals eat the plants, and then other animals eat those animals. And speaking of energy, I'm starving. So I'm off to take my place in the food chain. See you next time.
Okay, so what I would do is use this as an intro. It's less than 5 minutes. I would never do more than 5 minutes on a video. The kids lose interest pretty quickly. With a student that has special exceptionalities, a lot of time I will piece this out. This would be something I would allow students to self-pace through with the next activity I'm going to do with you, but I would actually keep my exceptional students with me for this next part and mute my other students. And then if a student needed to join, they always had that option. But I would be more guided and probably stop and ask reflective questions instead of giving an exceptional student all of that information up front. Additionally, you can see these are the definitions that were provided in the video, but I gave that to the students. I have personally never experienced where writing down a definition helps the student gain any knowledge or internalize it. They need to have discourse and interact with the content. So I provide them what I need them to interact with. I also make sure that it is a true definition so that they can interact with it in the way that they will see it if it is tested on a state test or on an exam for that content, even if it's modified. So after this slide, we are now to our first activity. So this Padlet, I'm going to share this link for you guys in the chat. Before I share it, here is what I would like for you to do. You are going to find your own food chain. So if you're not familiar with Padlet, this is an interactive check for understanding. You will click the plus button. You will put your first and last name. Then you can actually search the internet from here. You can click on web and search for a food chain that way. Or you can take a picture of a food chain and load it as a graphic. That's completely up to you. So here's an example. And then I want images. So I could find a food chain this way. Do your best to try to find a food chain that is not someone else's, okay? So after you have found your food chain, I gave an example with mine. So you have an image. I've also given you a sentence stem. So there's 3 specific things I'd like for you to look at now that we've had that video together, and you also have a reference point of notes. So what is the producer in your food chain? So in my case, I would use the sentence stem, and the producer is the plant is the producer in my food chain because it is green and it can photosynthesize. For example, of what is one consumer in your food chain and how do you know? I can say the insect is a consumer in my food chain because it gets its energy from other organisms. Again, you can use that reference sheet, and we can put the bit.ly into the chat as well if you need to get to that reference sheet. Finally, what is a decomposer in your food chain and how do you know? We haven't gotten to that one yet. So if you don't know that, that's okay. That's a check for understanding to see if someone knows it. That's an extra one. Decomposer we will cover soon, but a decomposer actually gets its energy from dead animals. So it's not a scavenger. It's not like a vulture that eats dead things on the side of the road. It actually decomposes dead animals. A lot of times it's mushrooms or bacteria. Those are good examples. So I'm going to put this into the chat so that you all may join onto the board. Let me get my chat up. All right, guys, you should be able to click that link down there and hop on to the presentation. I'm also going to put the bit.ly for all of this presentation resources in there for you so that you can click on that as well if you would like. Oops, copied the wrong thing. Apologies. Let's try that again. And then that's the bit.ly to get to all of the slideshow. So right now we should be on the Padlet using the link that's in the chat. Awesome. Already see someone on there. This is a fantastic way. Great job, guys. This is a fantastic way to have a check for understanding for students. Another thing you can do for students that are exceptional, I'm having you guys do it individually because you're adults. You can also break them into groups and they wouldn't know that you had ability grouped them. So for example, I could have a group and just call it group 1 and say these students are in group 1 and let them post their answer as a group and separate. That way it's not individualized. I can also set it to where there's a completely different Padlet for those kiddos so that they could go slower. And you could also put a full example like I did, but fill out the actual answers for students that are exceptional. Padlet is free, guys. Everything I'm showing you on here is free. And I can scroll down. I have it set to where everyone's answer drops below the previous. Going to give everyone a few more minutes to practice with this one. So again, free resource, it's Padlet. I dropped the link in the chat for you guys. So you're just playing with it. So you open up, you push the plus down here at the bottom. You put your first name here. And you search here. And then you can look for food web. I'm going to say ocean. And it's images. And then I can push enter. And I could pick one that would immediately jump up there. And then I could go ahead and talk about an example of a producer, to a consumer, and a decomposer if I had one. Okay. So a few things I love these answers. You guys are doing awesome. I know you're still playing with it. That's the point. You're getting used to playing with it. Very nice picture of an aquatic food chain. I also enabled something for you guys. So if you see up here at the top, it says use a sentence stems to complete your response, and then choose one of your peer statements that you agree with in each column and give them a star. If you disagree, you could offer a suggestion as a comment. When you create a Padlet, as I mentioned, it's free. You can make up to 3 free. You could make up to, you could make 2 separate ones if you have exceptional students. It really depends on their level. If they're below grade level, you may want to make a separate one, but no one else needs to know that. You just send that student a separate link. Oh, I like that. You got the worm in there too. The worm caterpillar is the consumer in the food chain because it feeds on the grass. Very nice. Very nice. Excellent job, guys. So you can also turn off in the specific settings. I have the filter profanity off. So if somebody wrote a bad word, it just puts little emojis. So it will delete that. You can also require approval in case you have a group of students that you're concerned about what they're posting, because that does happen. So you'll have, again, a live link to that in here as well. So let's go ahead and keep going, okay? So on this first slide, as you'll remember, we talked about the YouTube introduction, the important information. That link is still right here if you'd like to pull up the notes that I made. I want to go over this lesson plan right now just to show you a generic one. It looks a little bit lengthy, but it's not when you look at the bulk of it. I wrote a week's lesson using all of the resources that you're going to have today. So far we have done the engage lesson, which would be 1 period. We did a YouTube and we're exploring our check for understanding with producers, consumers, and we've talked about decomposers a little bit. Now, the biggest column that I think is the most important for us for today is how I differentiate that. So I would want to make sure that small group of students that I pulled or sent a separate Padlet would focus on producer and consumer only. And they need to know a producer has to be green for it to do photosynthesis and make its own food, and that a consumer eats other organisms. The biggest misconception with food chains and webs is it only shows what it eats. It's actually showing the energy flow. So it goes from the sun to the plant, from the plant to the first consumer, then from the first consumer to the next consumer, and then it could have a decomposer or go further up the food chain to other consumers. The next portion that I want to show you guys is what we're going to look at next. It's called Flipgrid. Okay, you will need your camera if it's available. You will need your voice recorder if it's available. So we're going to practice and play with it for a moment. Again, I'm giving you a lot of different resources. I just want you to be exposed to them. And if you ever have a question, you're more than welcome to email me. I have my email on the first and last slide of this presentation. So we're going to go through and we're going to look at making your own food chain. So that same food chain that you picked from the Padlet is perfect to use. If you'd like to find another one, that's great too. So I'm going to demo what I would do with Flipgrid for day 2 lesson. Now, what I would do for my exceptional students, I would have them use that important information food chain note to reference when they were scaffolding what they want to say. Students can identify producers and consumers, and they need to explain why. Then I would introduce decomposers to that separate group if I had introduced it to the whole group already. Depends on if those students had picked up on producer and consumer quickly or if they need a little more time, which is fine. Students can submit each question individually, and again, decomposer could be postponed if needed to the next day for our exceptional students. Okay. Also down here, have it written what kind of resources and materials you would need. And when you go up to the top, I identified what I expect students to be able to do as a content objective and what I would consider successful. Okay. So let's go ahead and jump in to a Flipgrid. Flipgrid is also free. I am not about giving you guys something that's not free. Free is a very happy place to be, and it allows no barriers for if you use the resource and you're afraid something's going to run out. So specifically on this one, and I have recorded myself, so we can look at how I recorded, and then I will let you play with it. Again, that link should work, but you can get in with this code as well. If you want to just type in Flipgrid, Flipgrid join right here. Well, mine's not going to open, but if you do the Flipgrid join, it will let you join using this code up here. There's also a QR code that's with it. It's embedded in the PowerPoint as well, but I will put the link in here momentarily. So we're going to find your own food chain online, and then you're going to tell me about the energy flow. So what's the producer? How do you know? What are the consumer or consumers if you have more than one? How do you know? Do you have a decomposer? How do you know? Again, with exceptional students, if decomposer hadn't been covered, that'd be okay. Decomposer is on the note sheet, and decomposer again does actually break down. They feed and gain energy from dead organisms. So it's not a consumer because it's not eating anything that was living. So how do you know? So again, I would give sentence stems, very similar to what I did on the Padlet to my students that are exceptional, and I will show you my video. Hey, my name is Allison Gillentine, and I am working on my project for 5th grade science, and I had to find my own food chain, so I found it on a device that was at my house. So what I want to talk about is the different things. The arrows show the energy and how it travels through. So grass gives its energy to the deer gives its energy to the cougar, and the cougar then dies and gets broken down here by bacteria. So I know that grass is a producer, and grass is a producer because it's green and it can do photosynthesis. Then photosynthesis and the grass gives its energy when it's eaten by the deer. And then the deer is a consumer because it gets its energy from other organisms. Then this deer will give its energy to the cougar when it eats the deer. And that's also a consumer because it gets energy from other organisms. And then this cougar will give its energy to the decomposers because decomposers get their energy from dead plants and animals as they break them down. Okay, guys, so that was an example so that you have something to go for, okay? So the reason that I put that on there is so that you could see what it looks like specifically As an example, I would do the same thing for my students. So I'm going to put this up. So if you are on a device, if you will search for Flipgrid join, that will be the code that you will put in. You can do this on a cell phone if you prefer to do that. This is free for all educators. So I'm going back to our presentation. So right here, it is free. Yes, free's happy. So this link right here again, guys, if you click on that, all of these are embedded if you don't want to have to go anywhere else. Okay. So make sure that you click on this. And then when you get to this screen under number 2, we've looked at our lesson plan so far together. We checked for understanding with Padlet. And now you are on your Flipgrid experience, okay? So I'm seeing if anybody else would be able to get in. If I was going to record another response, that's where I would go. But that is the code to go in and record a response. So can anyone access that? Are you able to get to that? Will that open for you? I'm just checking. Awesome. Thank you, ma'am, Ms. Cunningham. I just wanted to make sure that all the links were working. Awesome. Thank you. Is it Kinsey? Canise? Awesome. Thank you, Candace. I just wanted to make sure it was working, guys. Okay. So once you get in there, you are welcome to play with that. I can actually give feedback to you. Again, I'm giving you a lot of resources today, but I want to make sure I fill your tool belt so we can make sure that our exceptional students have a lot of options to scaffold. As you're exploring this resource, the way that I have used Flipgrid with my exceptional students, I generally will let them have their own Flipgrid that's slightly separate, and I try to likability group them for this because they tend to move at a different pace, which is perfectly fine. And then I can respond to them, but again, it doesn't look different to anyone else, even if you're on a group Google Hangout or if you were teaching them virtually, because they would be in a group with peers from their classroom. Additionally, sometimes with our exceptional students, you'll have students that are just low or not understanding a concept as quickly as their peers, and it's fine to group them together as well. We want to do what's best for the student at all times. And of course, definitely what's legal if the student has specific supports they need to be successful. All right, so now we have checked out Padlet, okay? So we have looked at Flipgrid and we have looked at Padlet. Now I'm going to show you something called Google Animation, and it will kind of blow your mind a little bit. But before we do that, the last thing that I want to show you is a Google form. That is part of the Google platform for Google for EDU. So I made a form today. So to check for understanding, this could be a daily grade when you feel like the students are ready to show that they could be successful. I set this up to grade itself, so it will spit out a spreadsheet for me. So a food chain does show the transfer of energy in an ecosystem, okay? The questions I'm asking them are not in the graphic, but I gave them some scaffold information. So the mouse is a consumer, you agree or you disagree because. Then they have to do a short answer and a complete sentence. So then they're having to show what they know. It's not just multiple choice. And I want them to use that vocabulary in context correctly. In this case, the mouse is a consumer because it gets its energy from the grasshopper. All right, this next quiz question is, the grass is a producer. I agree or disagree because. Well, in this case, it is an agree because the producer is green. It can do photosynthesis and it does not get its energy from other organisms. And then finally, the otter, which is brown with whiskers, in case they've never seen one, it's also labeled, is a producer. That they need to disagree with because it gets its energy from the fish, in this case, a brown trout. So you can also use a Google form, multiple, if you need to break it down for students with exceptionalities. And that's a very, very easy way to differentiate. And the The beauty of Google Suite is that form will be there and you could use it the next year. You just have to categorize it by how and when you are using it, okay? So I did have a script for you guys built in here for your Flipgrid. So again, this would be for all students. I would have them reference it, and then I would definitely make sure that my students had 2 screens up that were exceptional needs so that they had this in front of them. I did put a note, students needing extra support can reference the note page again, and they can actually record a separate response for each question. I did all the questions, but that didn't overwhelm me. Students could actually just do a producer one, submit that. Just do a consumer one, submit that. Just do Decomposer, submit that. So before we do this last portion, I wanted to review kind of best practices, I feel like, for when you have a student do a project. So you want to include the specific things that you are looking for grading, for points, and you want to provide this before students do the project. You can modify a rubric for your exceptional students to make sure they're successful and you're addressing their individualized educational needs. So I left it blank on purpose because this is where I would start, and then I would have an on-level version, and I would have a exceptional needs student version for what I was expecting for good start. What would that grade range be? What things would I expect to see? For basics are covered, what would I expect to see? What would my grade range be? And for exceeds expectation, what would my grade range be? And what would my expectations be? The bullet points. Here we go with our Google animations, guys. So I'm going to show you. So the Google Animations how-to slide. I made sure it was available to you. Two portions of a food chain. As you can see, I have opened a new Google Slides. I chose an image for grassland because this is so I can take the sun by doing Shift Command 4, and I'll just take him, and then I will go back over to my animation. What I will do now is pull that picture over. Yes, don't judge my desktop, lots of things. Where I would like it to be on my first slide. Oops, I pulled that to the wrong spot. Let me put that on the first one. So if I want him to be rising back here, I could start him back here and then copy him, paste him where I would like him to go on the following slide so that he could appear to rise. And then in this final one, I'm going to have him at the very top. I will go ahead and add one additional creature from my food chain. Actually, let's go ahead and add the grass. So I'm going to take my grass and add that next. Very similar way. And again, we're just doing the first few steps. And students should put their answers down here for what each thing is so the teacher can grade it. So they would say the sun is where the energy comes from, all the specifics of what you want done in the project. So for the producer, I then want the producer to show up here in that next slide. And now I am going to go ahead and add my grasshopper. You can leave herbivore. That's extra information. They should have done that from 4th grade, but it's certainly not going to hurt them. And now I'm going to drop my herbivore in over here. So I'm going to add him actually on this next one. So I want all those things to still stay. So what I'm actually going to do is copy this slide and paste it here, and go ahead and remove him on this one. So then my herbivore will pop up here, and he will be giving his energy to that. I can add an arrow if I would like to, but he can actually, so once you have things on there that you want to continue to keep, you want to make sure you copy from that slide. So for example, now I'm going to copy this slide into 6 as well, because what I want is this grasshopper to move. So since he's here on the next slide, then I need to move him over. It's going to make him look like he's jumped. Then I need to have him move even further over. So arrows can certainly be added. That's completely up to you, or you can have the students remove some of those things, or they can all be there. Now I'm going to show you how to animate this. You're actually going to publish it to the web. It's best to do every second, and I like to leave it on a loop because then it's going to go around and around again. Now I'm going to copy this, and we should be able to see this slideshow in a new tab. And it should animate for us. So we have the sun rising. Then we have a producer and an herbivore, and he hops off the screen. So I hope that gives you a general idea of where to start with your kiddos. All right. So that was a general Google Animations how-to overview. So here are a few animated project examples that I've done before that I have a little more fancy animation with. The more comfortable you are with Google, I drew that tree and then I have a bird. So I'm going to show you one that's got more moving parts to it, just as another example. And here's the one that I have published to the web. Hold on, I gotta change him. I need to start on slide 1 and I need to make it every second. So let me start it over from the beginning. Here's my bird. My tree is growing. He's eating berries from the tree. This would have all been in my notes. Then after he leaves, I have another deer that's coming along. The deer also eats grass, but then the lion eats the deer. So lots of opportunity for really cool stuff when you animate with Google, and it's pretty easy. You just have to get used to playing with Google. All right, what about questions for me, guys? I still have about 6 minutes, 7 minutes on my timer. I'm here till 12:15. What do you want to see more of, or what do you need support with?
So, ladies and gentlemen, if you have a question, I can't unmute you. I don't know if CTC IT can unmute you. But if you have a question and want to verbalize it, I can make you part of the presenter group and then unmute you. So if you put your hand up, if you have a question, I will be able to do that. So let's see, any questions?
You can put questions in the info bar too. I'll re-put this, the title up here too, so you can make sure you get to all the references. I see lots of people on here now too, which is awesome. So here's this. So with our extra time, what I want you to do is make sure that you have responded to each thing. So if you open that bit.ly that I just sent you, I give you a lot of new things. Let's make sure you've interacted with, okay, Joy, if the audio is off for the beginning of the animation, you can actually click the video and it'll replay on your device. So if you guys will go to the bit.ly with the virtual exceptional, it is case sensitive, so make sure that you're typing it correctly, okay? And then Joy, for your specific part that you missed, if you will click on slide 8, and the Google Animations how-to video is what you're going to want to listen to. Everyone else, what I would love to do is make sure that you have please interacted on the Padlet. So let's open that up and see how everybody's doing. Oh, we're getting more ones. And then I have Tanya that finished Decomposer. Nice, nice, nice. So make sure that you have interacted on the Padlet and you've had an opportunity to play with that. If you need me to put that link in there again, I can. Again, if you're able to get to this PowerPoint, all links are live for you, okay? Flipgrid, I'd like for you to interact with that as well. Okay, so try to record yourself and put a response to those questions, because the more you interact with it, you can anticipate what your students will need. So I'm going to add your Padlet link again so that you can jump on there if you didn't have a chance to. There are live links in the chat. So here is your Padlet link right there. Okay. And then I'm going to open up Flipgrid and I want to share this link as well. Right there. So Padlet is there. Once you get into the PowerPoint, that link will take that link that I put is in the PowerPoint. It's also in the chat. For your Flipgrid, I have the code up there. You would go join a Flipgrid group and a Google search. And your kids will be the same way, guys. That's why we want to play with it together. So you have the big picture. You've seen all the parts. Now we're playing with the interfaces. And again, I showed you nothing that's not free. Okay. I'm going back to check in the chat. Awesome. Got you, Miss Wright. And then Joy, were you able? Yes, I see. Thank you. Got it. So make sure you guys click on that bit.ly with the virtual exceptional. And then you're playing with Flipgrid. You're going to click that link. And you're also playing with the Padlet. Okay, because these are things that are free, and once you've experienced it as a student, like you are for me today, you'll be able to go and make your own accounts, and you'll know what your kids will be doing with those. Okay, I'm headed back to the Padlet now, so we can check that out again. Got even more, which is awesome, awesome, awesome. There's varied formats for Padlet as well. Okay. Doing good? Going back to look at my chat. Awesome. Very informative. Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Diane. So if you guys have additional questions, please ask me. I want to give you time to play with those things. That's the biggest thing. So make sure that you play with the Padlet and that you play with the Flipgrid, okay? The Flipgrid, again, is free, as is Padlet. So is Screencastify. So what I did when I made the video for you guys, that's just an extension in Google, okay? So that'll be the last thing that I show you really quickly. So I videotaped myself using Screencastify. I'm actually going to open up another window that I have, I believe it's in here. Let's see, I opened up my program today, making sure I was doing what I needed to do. This is my school one, but I'm going to open like my Google animation. And then this is just an extension. When you want to get an extension on your Google Education account, it needs to be on your Google Education account, okay? You go to add-ons, and then you go to get add-ons, and it's called Screencastify video editor, okay? The reason that they're saying is you couldn't find any is because I've already added it. It's right here for me, okay? So when Screencastify is added, it will record for you for up to 5 minutes. That is your limit. Okay, if you want to upgrade it, then of course that costs money, but it's still free for 5 minutes, and I've never needed it for more than 5 minutes. If I need to do multiple recordings, then I do so. Checking my chat again. Awesome. Thank you so much, Ms. Francis. If you guys need anything, please let me know if I can help you. I'm going back to the first slide just in case anybody didn't get the info. All right. So this beginning slide is the bit.ly virtual exceptional. Feel free to share it with friends. I'm all about helping kiddos and teachers be successful. And then I wanted to make sure that I said thank you. So I appreciate our time together. I have thoroughly enjoyed it. If there's anything I can do, please let me know. Shoot me an email. I'm happy to assist. It's on the next to last slide and the first slide. So as we close out together, I'm going to leave this presentation up in case anyone else needs to get it.
Mrs. Gillentine?
Yes.
Go ahead, finish.
I was just saying thank you. I'm done. If anybody
Okay.
needs me, my email's there, and so is the bit.ly, and all the resources are live and will remain so.
Okay, we have a participant who will say thank you officially. So go ahead, Ms. Samuels.
Good afternoon, everyone. All right, so Miss Allison, I just want to officially, on behalf of everyone, say a big thank you for your presentation. Thank you for all the information that you shared on blending learning and exceptional students. I'm sure that we have all learned, because I've learned a lot. And it's a lot of information, but it is so useful and it's relevant to, the situation that we're going through now, seeing that we have to be online. And you have showed us some creative ways on how we can use our virtual platforms to still pass on the lesson to students and to, interact online. And I'm sure that we'll be implementing at least one of what you have showed us in our own classroom spaces. So we thank you so much. And we do hope that you will continue to share the good information with others and just, be safe in Corona. So we thank you so much. All right, then.
Ladies and gentlemen, I will put up the link for you to please do the evaluation. We appreciate that. It's coming up in a minute. There you go. You can just click on the link and it will take you straight to the form that you will fill out.
Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. Will I get any feedback from the conference?
Mrs. Radway Morrison will contact you, I'm sure.
Okay, perfect. Okay, guys. Well, I appreciate y'all so much. Y'all have a fantastic rest of the conference, okay?
Thank you very much again. And thank you guys for being participants and good participants.
Yes, you were fantastic. And again, my email's there. You are welcome to email me if you have any questions. Y'all have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Sir, not seeing the link for the evaluation.
Not seeing it either.